Sometimes it feels like AAA games are all flash and no soul, massive budgets spent on marketing, while the actual game feels like eating cardboard in 4K. Meanwhile, AA games are out here on a tighter budget, crafting unforgettable experiences with more heart, creativity, and emotional damage than you'd expect. These aren't just hidden gems, they're full-blown masterpieces that quietly dunk on the big-budget titans. So here are 20 AA games that prove you don't need $1 billion to blow minds, just a good idea, a little chaos, and the guts to get weird. Let me introduce you to Kena, a game that looks so damn good people still think it's secretly made by Pixar interns on a rebellious side hustle. But no, it's made by Ember Lab, and somehow this tiny team delivered a world that's more beautiful than 90% of AAA games with 10 times the budget. You play as Kena, a spirit guide who runs around collecting dead people's emotional baggage like a supernatural therapist with a stick. And not just any stick. It turns into a bow, a bomb, and probably could do your taxes if you asked nicely. The combat is surprisingly snappy, like it's been practicing martial arts while meditating in a forest. And those tiny black creatures called rots? Yeah, they're supposed to be spirit helpers, but they're just adorable freeloaders. They look like soot balls from Spirited Away, and I die for them. Kena somehow manages to mix grief, combat, and Pixar-level charm into a game that slaps way harder than it has any right to. This game is basically couples therapy disguised as a chaotic fever dream. You play as two tiny quarreling parents who get turned into dolls and have to survive through levels that feel like your childhood toys, mixed with whatever your brain comes up with during a high fever. There's a talking book with a Spanish accent that will ruin your day, mostly by yelling at you like your mom after you forgot to take the chicken out of the freezer. The gameplay switches styles more often than a fashion influencer with Wi-Fi, and somehow every single level is a banger. 1 minute you're platforming with nails and hammers, the next you're flying squirrels being hunted by a war-hardened vacuum cleaner with serious abandonment issues. And don't get me started on the elephant scene. If you know, you know. It's funny, frustrating, heartwarming, and occasionally traumatic. Kind of like marriage, really. This isn't just a game, it's a team-building exercise from hell, and I loved every second. Evil West is the result of someone watching a spaghetti western, reading Dracula, then downing 3 Red Bulls and shouting, "What if cowboys, but with electricity and demon punching?" You're Jesse Rentier, a cowboy so macho he makes Clint Eastwood look like he orders oat milk lattes. You stomp through the Wild West, blowing up vampires, monsters, and things that shouldn't legally be allowed to exist, all while dragging around a gauntlet that turns your enemies into chunky salsa. The game's logic: who needs subtlety when you can electrocute a werewolf into ash while shouting one-liners that sound like they were ripped from a 90s action movie draft thrown in the trash? And yes, there's lore. There's a whole vampire civil war, ancient conspiracies, and evil science dudes trying to invent stuff that probably violates at least 7 FDA regulations. Evil West isn't smart. It's not deep. It's just testosterone-fueled nonsense that punches way above its weight class. Literally. Control is the kind of game where you walk into a room, see a fridge that screams if no one's watching it, and go, yeah, that seems about right. You're Jessie Faden, a woman with amazing hair and the patience of a saint who becomes the director of a shadowy government agency called the Federal Bureau of Control after casually picking up a gun that talks. From there, it's a journey through a brutalist skyscraper that rearranges itself like IKEA furniture after 6 espressos. The enemies? Mutated office workers infected by red vibes called the Hiss. The gun? A shape-shifting nightmare cannon. The files you read? Absolute comedy gold, including one about a rubber duck that teleports when unobserved. This game is like SCP fanfiction written by David Lynch while listening to synthwave. It's confusing, brilliant, and sometimes makes you wonder if your own coffee machine is possessed. AAA games wish they had this much personality and metaphysical sass. Sifu is a martial arts revenge story, but instead of leveling up, you level older. Every time you die, you age like a banana on a summer windowsill, and suddenly that cool roundhouse kick you mastered at 25 becomes a creaky hip snap at 65. You're on a mission to beat 5 bosses who murdered your master, and apparently own warehouses filled with nothing but angry goons and dramatic lighting. The combat? Chef's kiss. Every move feels handcrafted by someone who binge-watched old kung fu movies while angrily button-mashing a controller. You'll parry, dodge, and kick people into furniture like you're trying to break IKEA for sport. It's the most stylish beatdown simulator I've ever played, and the aging mechanic adds a weirdly existential flavor to your playthrough. Do you want to be young and fragile, or old and powerful but one paper cut away from retirement? Your choice. Either way, Sifu makes you feel like a legend, or like someone who forgot to stretch. Atlas Fallen is what happens when someone takes a bunch of sand rage and a suspicious amount of anime influence, tosses them into a blender, and shouts, "Let's make God cry." This game is set in a desert world where gravity clearly took a lunch break. You get a gauntlet that lets you surf through dunes like you're auditioning for a Mad Max reboot directed by Tony Hawk. Combat? Oh, it's all about flinging yourself in the air, juggling monsters with sand punches, and summoning weapons so oversized they should be paying rent. The story tries really hard to be serious. There's gods, rebellion, and oppression, but honestly, I was too busy sandboarding like a caffeinated Aladdin. The upgrade system is wild, the enemies look like rejected Pokemon evolutions, and the traversal is so satisfying that walking in other games now feels like punishment. Atlas Fallen might not have the polish of a AAA title, but it has heart, chaos, and sand in places sand shouldn't be. Grizz is not a game, it's a poetic watercolor mood swing wrapped in a platformer. You don't really play Grizz, you feel it. You're a girl lost in a world that looks like it was painted by someone going through a breakup while listening to indie piano music in a candlelit art studio. There's no dialogue, no combat, just you and your emotions. And by emotions, I mean you turning into a rock, soaring like a bird, and occasionally doing things that make you whisper, "Am I okay?" to your controller. Every level represents a stage of grief, but somehow it never gets depressing. It just slaps your soul gently and whispers, "You're healing now." The soundtrack could melt glaciers, and the visuals might make your eyeballs weep tears of cultured appreciation. AAA games are too busy trying to impress you with explosions. Grizz is over here drawing stars with sadness and making you feel things you haven't processed since 2013. Next on the list is Hellblade. This game is a psychological horror/hallucination simulator where the main character, Senua, hears voices and so will you, because they're in your headphones, breathing on your neck, judging your dodges, and probably critiquing your Spotify playlists. Senua is a picked warrior on a mission to bring her dead lover's soul back from Helheim because apparently therapy doesn't exist in Viking times. The combat is tight, brutal, and surprisingly emotional for a game that involves stabbing monsters made of smoke and trauma. But the real star is the sound design. Wear headphones or the game will personally email you asking what's wrong with your life choices. The whole thing is so atmospheric that walking through fog starts to feel like a spiritual experience. Also, the game doesn't hold your hand. It just silently stares at you while you scream at puzzles involving ancient symbols and rotating rocks. It's not just a game, it's an experience that politely shoves your brain off a cliff. If someone told you a Souls-like starring a hermit crab and a trash ocean would be one of the most creative games of the year, you'd say, put the Red Bull down. But here we are. In another Crab's Treasure, you play as Krill, a crab on a mission to recover his repossessed shell, because apparently capitalism reaches even the ocean floor. Instead of armor, you wear bottle caps, soup cans, and whatever dumpster couture you can find, making it the only game where you can tank a boss hit using a tuna can as a helmet. The combat is Souls-like, yes, but with seafood flair, dodging, parrying, and getting your crusty little butt handed to you by mutated sea creatures and sentient plastic forks. The game is hilarious, self-aware, and somehow manages to make ocean pollution charming. It's like Dark Souls fell into SpongeBob and developed a moral conscience. I came for the memes, stayed for the surprisingly deep mechanics, and left wondering if I should recycle more. Ever wanted to play a game that feels like binge-watching a crime drama while your choices ruin everyone's lives in real time? As Dusk Falls is exactly that. It's an interactive story where the art looks like a moving graphic novel, and the characters make decisions that range from slightly unwise to congrats, you've doomed the entire cast. The story spans decades, starting with a botched motel robbery and spiraling into generational trauma, guilt, and way too many tense family dinners. There's no combat, no open world, just dialogue choices, QTEs, and a constant nagging feeling that you're messing up. But that's the fun part. You will absolutely screw things up. You'll try to save someone and accidentally ruin 3 lives instead. It's like a soap opera, except nobody's cheating with the pool boy. They're just robbing gas stations and hiding secrets that would make Maury's jaw drop. It's emotional, unpredictable, and makes AAA narrative games look like shy middle school plays. If a vending machine tried to seduce you while a robot ballerina kicked you through a ceiling, congratulations, you've just played Atomic Heart. Set in a Soviet sci-fi fever dream where everything is chrome, unhinged, and slightly horny, this game is basically BioShock after 6 shots of vodka. You play as a soldier with the attitude of a guy who yells at self-checkout machines, and you get magical polymer powers and guns that look like they were designed by IKEA during a midlife crisis. The world is gorgeous in a communism meets LSD way. The robots are terrifyingly graceful, and the story? It's like reading a sci-fi novel written by your conspiracy theorist uncle. Confusing, ridiculous, but weirdly compelling. AAA games don't take risks like this. They're too scared. Atomic Heart looked at convention and said, "Niet, comrade," then shot it with a lightning glove and made out with a fridge. Respect. Here's a romantic ghost hunting adventure where love and exorcism are equally messy. In Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, you play as Red, a supernatural soldier who travels around 17th century New England trying to help tormented souls pass on, which would be easier if his dead girlfriend wasn't tagging along like the world's most emotionally complicated NPC. You have to decide whether to help spirits or harvest their souls to bring her back to life, and oh boy, the moral choices are spicier than a Salem witch trial. The combat is satisfying, punch ghosts, shoot monsters, and occasionally switch to your ghost girlfriend so she can spiritually body slam evil into submission. It's one of those games where the story sneaks up on you, stabs you in the heart, then hugs you while whispering, "This was your fault." If AAA games had half this emotional tension and ghost-fueled relationship drama, they'd be interesting again. This is the only game where crying into your hoodie while rewinding time to fix your friendship breakup feels totally normal. Life is Strange takes place in a sleepy little town full of sad teenagers, emotionally unstable photographers, and one girl who can bend time like she's trying to avoid social interaction. You play as Max, an awkward artsy teen who discovers she can reverse time, but only to make catastrophically worse decisions the second time around. The game is basically a heartfelt indie film wrapped in Tumblr aesthetic, with butterflies, emo soundtracks, and the looming sense that your dialogue choices are just flipping coins with fate. And yet, it works. It punches you right in your emotional pancreas. No massive budget needed, just great writing, real characters, and awkward eye contact. Life is Strange proves you don't need explosions. Sometimes all it takes is a Polaroid, a nosebleed, and the haunting realization that your choices have the emotional weight of a baby grand piano. Here's a game that forces you to play co-op with yourself, which is honestly the most emotionally exhausting kind of teamwork. In Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, you control, wait for it, two brothers, one analog stick for each. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. It's like trying to pat your head and rub your stomach while sobbing uncontrollably. These brothers are on a journey to save their dying father, and the game makes you solve puzzles, climb cliffs, and face your feelings, all without a single line of dialogue. It's silent, it's subtle, and it slaps harder than a Shakespearean tragedy with a joystick. The twist at the end? Let's just say if you're not crying in a fetal position next to your controller, you might be legally classified as a brick. AAA games have cinematics. Brothers has your soul in a vice grip, and it doesn't even need words. Just two sticks, one heartbreak, and the quiet sound of you questioning everything. This is a game where you play as a traumatized sniper girl who's had enough of cult leaders, creepy masks, and being emotionally manipulated, so she does what any reasonable person would do, enters an abstract liminal world where every bullet is a hate-fueled puzzle. Children of the Sun is part murder simulator, part artistic breakdown, and part psychological exorcism. You control a single bullet per level, but you can redirect it mid-air like you're the angriest physics teacher alive. Each shot is both a tactical challenge and a metaphorical slap in the face, and somehow it all works. It's deeply unnerving, unapologetically artsy, and stylish in that "I think this game just judged me" way. AAA games would have turned this into a loud multiplayer mess. This one whispers to you, "Hey, that want to channel your vengeance into geometry?" And somehow you say yes. If you've ever wanted to play hide and seek with yourself in a sentient space palace that judges you like a disappointed parent, Echo is your game. You play as a space aristocrat, don't ask, who enters a sprawling, eerie environment that creates copies of you, and then learns from everything you do. Stealth? Your Echo's stealth. Shoot? They shoot. Jump around like a caffeinated kangaroo? Guess what? So do they. It's like fighting a mirror that's smarter than you, wears the same outfit, and absolutely hates your guts. The visuals are hauntingly beautiful, like a luxury hotel possessed by existential dread. It's a game about identity, behavior, and trying not to scream while your clone kicks you down a marble hallway. AAA studios would have turned this into a bloated space opera with a 45-minute tutorial. Echo gives you silence, elegance, and a slow descent into self-loathing. In a good way. What if Cyberpunk 2077 had no side quests, no emotional downtime, and just pure, unfiltered ninja rage? That's Ghost Runner 2. You are a cybernetic katana-wielding badass with the mobility of a caffeinated squirrel and the reaction time of someone who just snorted adrenaline. It's wall running, sword slashing, bullet dodging chaos, and if you stop moving, you die. There's no room for error, but also no room for boring. The game throws you into a techno-dystopia that's so neon it could give a rave a migraine. You don't get time to explore your feelings or sit in a sad apartment. You get fast-paced platforming puzzles and bosses that hit like a truck made of lasers. AAA games spend millions trying to build immersion. Ghost Runner 2 just slaps a katana in your hand and says, "Go be awesome or die trying," a lot. And you will, many, many times. This is the most terrifying bad day at work simulator ever created. You're a regular dude on a Scottish oil rig dealing with supernatural horror that escalates from weird puddle to eldritch nightmare in under an hour. No guns, no superpowers, just a flashlight, some ladders, and the creeping realization that you are absolutely not paid enough for this. Still Wakes the Deep is psychological horror at its finest, dripping with atmosphere, soaked in tension, and fully committed to making you hate water, pipes, and suspicious noises forever. AAA horror usually gives you weapons and inventory management. This game gives you a hard hat and trauma. You're not a chosen one, you're just some guy named Kaz with unresolved guilt and a growing number of moist regrets. If you're into the kind of horror that slowly crawls under your skin and makes you scream internally while crawling through vents, this one's for you. This one's for the people who thought Devil May Cry wasn't chaotic enough and also wanted to play dress-up in a blood-soaked martial arts opera. Bloody Spell is a Chinese action RPG where you play a very angry girl with more combos than a vending machine full of capoeira. There's no deep story here. Just demons, blades, and the constant feeling that you accidentally downloaded a modded version of Neo on meth. The visuals are over the top, the enemies are allergic to subtlety, and the customization. You can make your character look like a fashion disaster from a gothic rave, and somehow it works. Combat is fast, punishing, and oddly satisfying, like beating someone with your regrets in a ballet recital. This game didn't have a massive budget, but it has style, swagger, and the kind of energy that makes you question why AAA games are so obsessed with realism when they could be letting you uppercut demons into orbit in high heels. Welcome to 14th century France, now with extra rats. A Plague Tale follows Amicia and her little brother Hugo as they flee knights, cultists, and an ocean of plague rats that swarm like living nightmares. Innocence was the "we just want to survive" chapter, while Requiem cranked it up to, "oh no, the kid's psychic and now rats are forming architecture." This series is proof that AA storytelling can utterly destroy AAA drama. It's tender, tragic, and sprinkled with enough stealth and alchemy to make you feel clever, right before rats eat your ankles. The visuals are gorgeous, the performances are gut-wrenching, and the sibling bond? Stronger than half the Marvel Cinematic Universe. AAA games like to tell you they're cinematic. A Plague Tale doesn't tell you, it just puts a broken child in your arms and dares you not to cry while France dissolves into a rodent apocalypse. And there you have it, 20 AA games that didn't need a blockbuster budget to hit harder than most AAA darlings. If you've played any of these or have more underrated gems, drop them in the comments, because let's be real, the AA rebellion is alive and well.